information provided in this show is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Viewers should use their own discretion and consult with a healthcare professional for personalized guidance and recommendations. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Health Revolution. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison, and we are delighted that you have joined us today. And our show is all about engaging conversation, elevating health and wellness, and empowering transformation. And no matter which way that you've tuned into us, don't forget to hit the subscribe button at the bottom of your screen. We want to stay connected to you. And of course, our show notes are at the bottom of the screen. It is there for your reference. This is an impactful type of episode today. So you're going to want to have those takeaway points ready to go. You know, as we are rounding out 2023 and we are entering 2024, there is a lot of emphasis with elevating your healing and taking your growth to be your best self to new heights. And this is a must-see episode. So glad that you're tuning in. I'm excited to introduce to you my next guest. Take a look at this clip. Let's get to know her. Meet Andrea Wehlann, certified Hatha Yoga Teacher, social worker with a background in psychology, and she's also a best-selling author. But what truly sets her apart is her incredible journey of triumph over adversity. Andrea's dedication to spiritual healing was born out of surviving child abuse, rape, sexual assault, and infant loss. These traumatic experiences led her down a path of bulimia, depression, and suicidal tendencies. But she didn't just survive, she thrived. With professional knowledge and personal strength, Andrea became a passionate teacher and leader in the wellness space. She created a community under her platform, Gangamoon Yoga, where she continues to connect with others, guiding them on a path of healing and interconnection. Andrea authored 3 books, Deeper Days, No Matter How Dark the Stain, and the most recent, Stillness in the Storm. These books guide readers on a journey of self-discovery, inviting them to find inner calm, embrace their pain, and celebrate the power of the present moment. Andrea Wehlann continues to demonstrate she's a beacon of resilience and healing, ready to share with others how to rise above their pain. Andrea Wehlann, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
I am so thrilled. You know, in this day and age, this is a time where we have greater resources to heal from the things that we discover that hurt us. Talk a little bit about why healing matters. Why should we pay attention to attempting to heal and becoming better and getting past those trenches of our lives?
I think it's important, especially these days. I think, as we could see, I think most of your listeners, I think you might agree with me that the consciousness has lifted. We have the internet here. It's time for us to stop playing small. I think we can all agree that playing small serves nobody. I think we can all agree that there's something inside of us that burns to be more, that there's something inside of us that searches for change. And this is the time. There's not another book that you need to read. There's not another course that you need to take. All that you need to heal is within you now. Healing, unlike dis-ease, which can be caused all through childhood, all through high school, takes a long time. It takes a long time sometimes unless it's trauma, a traumatic event, a car crash, something violent. But usually it takes a long time to dis-ease, to separate from yourself. But we're at a time now where we can put those pieces together, where we know from shows like yours, Adriana, where we know that we have tools, that we have capacity inside of us. The veil has been lifted, and we can see that the peace that we used to think is at the mountaintops of Tibet is now inside of us. There's a consciousness that is lifted. And so it's important that we all rise with that. But there is no peace if the pieces of your life that have hurt you aren't in their correct spot in your mind psychologically. So think of psychology as little filing system. All of the hurt, all of the trauma, everything that has bothered you, parenthood, childhood, being an adolescent, things that have happened, divorce, separation, miscarriage, rape, all of these things, there's a spot for that. And what I want people to know is that you can handle it. You can handle hard things, and there's a spot for that. But if there's not that putting it away, if there's not that healing of those things, they will creep back up and bite you in the most uncanny of circumstances.
You
So
know, you bring such a powerful point that we grow from healing and from doing the work. At what point for you in your life did you realize that this was something you needed to trust, that this journey was one that you could do? Because oftentimes when we're going through the super hard times or the traumas in our life, the despair just clouds our vision and we're not able to see that. So at what point did you make the decision? What helped you decide, you know what, I can do this and I can overcome this?
that that's is part of why I'm here today, and that I want to spread the message of the books and why I wrote the books. I didn't know. There were light posts for me. There was the Oprah Winfrey show. That showed me that there was pain and that people could heal it, that someone was there to listen to. Other than that, I didn't know. I had heard that Tibet is peaceful. So here I was trying to work hard, save my money to try and get to these cities where peace was so that I could feel it. Right. So there were signposts for me, but I really did a lot of legwork. I didn't know that I could heal. It just kind of happened. But this is why I'm sharing my story, because if I can do it without what we're equipped with now, anybody can do it. And it's important that they know that, because nobody told me I can heal. But I'm telling you, if you're listening, if you've got pain, you can heal that.
For a lot of people, it's the words, they're oftentimes challenging to sink into the soul. And so, if it's something that's not a new concept of looking things from a different angle, what allowed you to decide? And so I like the idea of getting to that turning point where you were looking above the horizon, where you decided, you know what, it's time for me to heal. I'm going to be determined and resilient to make this happen. What was that fork in the road for you? Like, what element helped you decide and then go forth in that direction?
So lots of forks. I had a lot of forks. Which is
Lots of
part of my
forks.
gift. So when people walk through my Gangamoon Yoga Studio doors, I can meet them exactly where they're at, and I'm so grateful for all of my pain. Really, I started to notice patterns, Adriana. I started to see that. Okay, I was raped. Okay, then I had sexual assault. Okay, then something else, then something else. And I was like, wait a minute. The one constant in all of that is me. It was patterns that came to me, and I could start to see that these were things that, how do I stop this? It was within me.
And it's huge to decide that, because in life it's real easy to say, and it could have been, you could have simply concluded that, okay, these things happen to me, I'm a victim per se. And I'm curious with what allowed you to not go down that route, not to decide that
Mhm.
these things occurred in your life, and yet you had the resilience and the wherewithal to have the mindset for growth.
I did that too. I did play the victim role, and what you see in what I saw in society growing up, what I saw in the newspapers growing up, that would be the fame of my life, is just the victim here on the road, and that's the end of that. Yeah, I made it. So I did play the victim role. I carried it around, and I think that's the energy that I had. Why the patterns kept coming, the same thing happened. And one night in university, I remember I was like, okay, so I'm a victim. The bad things happen now. Okay, that's the end. It's just suicide now. So I took the steak knife and I started to cut my wrist, and I could see from the steak knife had little ridges or grooves, and that's what was coming off in my skin, and it looked like cheese to me. And I was like, okay, so this is the end. And I had an insight there that showed me that's not the end. There's an up.
And
And I
and I
think after that, seeing that and feeling that is when I started to switch my sight that maybe there is something else. Maybe there's something more. And I think when you get to that realization, when you start to see things different, the universe opens up.
do you when this was happening, obviously this was in that moment where you very likely I'm going to assume that you felt alone. Was there anything that maybe your support system at that time, was there anything that they did they know that you were feeling this way? Did they know that you were going through and navigating these darker chapters of your life? Was there anything that they did? Could they have picked up on this?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I
Okay.
don't think so. I think it's just you come across as weird. I don't think I knew how to process it. I don't think I knew how to have words for any of these things. I think I was just a jerk, angry, and not very nice. And I think that I thought that the world owed me something because my childhood was crappy.
And
Yeah.
and so I think it's very telling, and I certainly can relate. My childhood was one that was a little bit more troublesome than I would have preferred on my own. And it's funny because there comes a point where you take life by the reins, and you are determined to really to succeed, and there's this
Mhm.
level of outlasting that temporary, outlasting that chapter that can drive you. Was that something that you developed when you were studying, or was this after the fact?
Um, the drive and determination to be better, to succeed. I think that I had a total shift and I wanted to completely counter all of that stuff within me. So I got really hungry and I had a lot of drive. I liked who I was. I signed up, I checked myself in for anger management first, did all that, and I liked who I was. I liked all of that. I signed up for course after course, Reiki, reconnective healing. I climbed the mountaintops of Brazil, trained Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, learned how to save my life. Feng Shui, Heal Your Eyeballs courses in Toronto at the Learning Annex, meeting Marianne Williamson. Like the list goes on because I heard Dr. Phil say, for every negative thing you say to your kid, you need 10 positive ones to balance it. So I made really, really sure that I did 400 million really nice trainings and things so that my inside could be pure because I really, I just didn't want to be like that anymore. I didn't want to be angry. I didn't want to inflict on other people how I had felt once. That's what drove me.
And one thing we do have in common, you being a social worker and majoring and having studies in psychology, that was one thing that I
Mhm.
had when I was in college. And one thing I found interesting was that to study it and then apply it to my own life were two totally separate things. I knew it book wise, and just the different approaches to understanding human behavior, but then there were certain
Mhm.
things that I did not apply, even though there's right in front of my face. Did you have
Mhm.
moments where, could you relate to, say, me sharing with you that moment or that time frame in college where I got it, but I didn't get it. I didn't apply it.
Did you have boyfriends?
I did growing. So I had a college boyfriend that I probably shouldn't have had.
Amen. No, I didn't. So I took the psychology and then I started doing a course in miracles and I started to apply it everywhere. So waitressing, I always had a waitressing job. It got me through to live in all different cities and it's been amazing. But I would hold the drink tray and serve the drinks, practicing what I had learned in class, practicing A Course in Miracles. One of them is the love in me salutes the love in you. I looked at every customer that came in and I practiced that stuff. because I felt really I was a bad seed inside, and I wanted to make sure that I changed all of the seeds within me. I
Is
practiced it.
I love that. I want to say that I practiced some things. I think I did it more sporadically at the time of study, full transparency. And you mentioned something that caught my attention. You said, I was a bad seed. Is it true? Would that be a true statement, or would you say that there was just more of the decision making process not being where it needed to be at the time?
I felt bad for a long time, but about 4 or 5 years ago, I've taken out of my vocabulary the words good and bad, and I just believe that everything is nature.
So there's a whole learning process behind understanding movement
About
and
48 years, maybe.
okay. So, so after
Yeah, mhm.
no, go ahead. I found myself thinking that, after college, obviously this is where we start to evolve and represent our space. And take me through your process of becoming stronger. What were the elements that really spoke to you that you incorporated? Maybe that you didn't realize that you, looking back, that you did, but what were some reliable components that were part of your building blocks in the beginning?
Silent retreats. I
Okay.
would check myself into Mount Carmel Spiritual Retreat Center. I wrote them letters. I said, I think I'm really bad. All of these things happened to me. I can't afford your $600 tuition, but I don't want to be like this anymore. Can you help me? And they would say, okay, come for a weekend. So I would check myself into places like that. I would sit in the silence. I wrote poetry through all of it. So I had a little bit of an outlet. I read books from teachers that I would hear about from the courses. Um, I studied the power of prayer and wrote prayers out for 2 whole years. I wrote them all out. Just that was powerful for me. Finding teachers that I love, that I resonated with. Oprah likes to say, fake it till you make it. Copy someone that you want to be. If you're not that person, copy the things that they're doing. So I did that with Princess Diana. I did that with Martin Luther King, who's behind me here. That I still do those things to this day. But I did that to pull myself so far out of where I was born or from what I was into. I really wanted to transcend. I really wanted to transform those things.
So what I love about that is that you're highlighting taking actionable steps, that you really had that determination, and you were leaning towards, you were giving yourself the space to learn.
Well,
And
I had the other side, right? I had the steak knife at my wrist. I was going. I was completely. So I just
you know
went the other way.
and it's very telling that you recognize that it could have been a different outcome, but
Mm-hmm.
the growth in you is resilient. What was the one thing that you took away from the retreat? Because I've heard this several times, silent retreats, and of course not everyone does them, but
Mm-hmm.
what is the one component that allows you to grow? What's the one thing that's part of that
Mm-hmm.
experience that is a difference maker?
So silent retreat also became part of my Zen Buddhist practice many moons down the road from those first days of just checking myself in because something's wrong. But the whole idea, and then I just did it again for the last year and a bit, and I wrote Stillness in the Storm from that space at this age. This is a practice that has been going on for so many years. All the sages, anyway, the the whole thing is it's you. The whole thing about silence is it's just you. There's no imprints from music. There's no imprints from other people. It's you. You sit with yourself. And it's profound and it's amazing. And I had the gift of writing. So I would write and just pour through everything that I could feel, that I could hear, the people that were around. Mhm.
That stillness, that being able to sit with yourself. I think that in this day and age that that is still a challenge for so many, but definitely one that we can learn from. We're going to take a commercial break. We will be right back after this. Welcome back to the Health Revolution. I'm your host, Adriana Morrison. We're spending time with my guest today, Andrea Wehlann. She is, amongst the hats that she wears, she's also an author. And we get to dive into one of her books, No Matter How Dark the Stain. Take a look at this.
I wrote this book for women. I wrote this book because I think it's time to change things. Listen, I know about the suffering in the world. I know about the suffering in your own heart because I have suffered myself. It taught me that no matter how dark, no matter how bad things were, there's still another side. To shine through the darkness, to rise up, because no matter what has happened to you, no matter how dark the stain, as my book is titled, the world needs you.
Andrea Wehlann, this book, No Matter How Dark the Stain, is quite riveting. Talk us through this and talk a little bit about before you decided to write. Share a little bit about the framework behind this amazing book.
We've talked about some of the experiences that I've had in my life. Some of them, I believe, are extraordinary to what some people will experience. I've always written through all of them. And what I saw on the paper was, hey, where'd that word come from? It all seemed a little bit bigger than me. But I don't think I would be sitting here today if I didn't have that power of being able to express everything that I was experiencing through poetry. It has always flowed from me, through me. It always seemed bigger than me. So let's go to 2021. the world shut down. I mean, I had won poetry awards before. I had submitted articles at Brock University and published in the press. I always knew there was something about the poetry. I always wanted a poetry book. It was going to be called A Blanket of Comfort, was how I had designed it, just for women, like they would feel comfortable reading it. When the pandemic happened and I lost my job, my business was shut down, Ganga Moon Yoga was closed, I was home with the kids. What I had heard from the police officers and some of the ladies on the street was that domestic violence had gone up 60%. The calls into the homes went up 60%. Do you know how many women that is that are sitting scared in their homes? That number, I don't even want to know. But my heart cracked wide open, and I thought, who am I to not publish this book? How can I reach those women? How can I touch their hearts? Because I know something. I know that it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with it. I saw that for myself. And putting this book together is me really trying to reach the hearts of all women that are feeling pain, the women making those phone calls, the women who've been raped and think there's nothing left, the women who've lost their babies and are sitting there and can't leave the house. Like how there's so much that we experience as women. And this, I just had to have this book out there. It was just a need in me. It was a pulse burning through my soul to have it out there.
You mentioned that you've spent time, years, a good portion of your life writing poetry. What was the first time? How far back can you go? How far? When do you recall is the first moment where poetry really spoke to you?
They're here beside me actually. In grade school, the teacher wrote on some of my poems. Waitressing in high school, I have just beside me. It's so funny is all of the receipt book. When you waitress before, you probably remember you write on the little notepad. All of mine is poetry on all of them. Toilet paper from the bathroom stalls. When I was little, I noticed it. I noticed I felt a lot of pain all the time, but I also was writing all the time.
Tell me the connection that words have for you in your life. How powerful. Now, this is digging a little bit deep here. Where describe the connection about words and what they do for you, for people that you've noticed that maybe the typical person doesn't pick up on right away.
Hmm. I think that words, generally speaking, a nice way to look at it is as if you can write the words of how you're feeling out and see it on a piece of paper, you can work with it. If you have thoughts that are ruminating through the mind and you can't catch them, they will constantly bring you down because there's no input of something different and what you focus on expands. So if you can write out the pain of how you're feeling, it creates space. One, in the body. Space for what? Health, wellness, kindness, compassion, because those are the seeds that are within us. But also, if you can see it written down on paper, it doesn't hurt as much, right? It's the fear and having it inside that makes it like, oh, maybe I should pay attention to that. Maybe this, maybe that. And you can go on all day or all week like that. But no, 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 no. Write it down. You can see it. Be like, okay, I was grumpy at lunch because of this. Okay, well, then you can move on and it's done. Healing happens in an instant. If you can see your pain written down, you can work with it, you can move it, and you can transform it.
So talk to me about the connection between, say, the silence, the being still and being present in your own space and the quietness that is part of that. Now connect that and help me to understand myself and viewers the power with words and the description and how it can integrate and we can learn from both of these two.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Thank you. That's interesting. So what I just talked about is the process of if you just stuff that just comes up every day. Say I'm chubby. Okay, write that out. That's one way, right? Here's the power of stillness. Stillness is the inside voice within your mind. It's always there. There's an inner song in everybody. There's a natural intelligence that, see, if the acorn becomes the tree, right? There's a natural intelligence there. The mango seed doesn't become the acorn tree. Why? There's a natural intelligence there. It's going to become a mango. There's a natural intelligence inside of us. Here's the difference. So the first one, the first part of your question is what I spoke to. Whatever's bothering you, whatever's happening, put it out on paper, work with it, see it, then move on. There's space. When you're still, if you can be still, there's a kingdom of peace, words, kindness. A whole kingdom lives within that stillness.
I love that.
It's phenomenal. There's different words. In Zen, it's called vipassana. It's insight. And when you're quiet and when you're still, you can hear things. But we live in a fast-paced culture like this, nonstop, the cell phones like this. So it's really, really hard. If there's no yoga practice, if there's no fitness, if there's none of that practice, you don't hear the inside voice. You won't hear it. It's just reactivity. So stillness is a practice of non-reactivity and hearing and trusting and listening to the voice within. It's always playing. It's always singing.
Is it harder to be still as we get older, or do you feel like as we age and we go through the aging process, is it harder, easier, or talk a little bit about that in terms of evolvement? What does that look like for what you see?
I like what there's a conversation with Wayne Dyer and Marianne Williamson, and I love what they said about this. And I didn't know it before I had heard it, so I'll share. They said that the adolescence, university, that's a high energy time of life, and you're got to get the job and work at the bars and boyfriends and all of these things. There's a high energy there. And in the middle of your life is like the age of understanding. It's like there's a morning of your life and there's an afternoon. And that's when you can look back at all of the adolescence, that high energy, and look back and really understand things. So that's what came up as you asked that question was there's an age of understanding. The stillness is only if you practice it, if you feel it. If you've heard it once and you trust it, you'll probably go back to it. It's like a muscle, it strengthens.
I think sometimes there are and I have moments where I've struggled with stillness just because of the anxiety of the things that maybe are calling my name, the levels of responsibility that I've had in my life. And so what would you say to the person who's like, I'm having such a hard time being still? What would you say to them?
There's a few things, and depending on the location, where are we? Like when we say that, are we out at dinner or are you in my yoga studio? But my Zen Buddhist teacher, Michael Stone, taught me something really nice. And he said, if you have trouble sitting or if you feel like you can't be still, think of the things in the room that are still. The walls are still, the floors they're not moving, right? So can you connect with the things around you that are still and bring that stillness into your body? And another thing, if you have a hard time sitting and being silent, like we sit like this when we practice, but we're not just doing that here. I mean, you and I are in the States and Canada, but half the world right now, as we're talking, is sitting like that. So when you're at home, you're not sitting by yourself, Adriana, in the fitness studio, just trying to be still up in here. There's half a world that is sitting still, and you're sitting with them. You can do that with your mind. Imagine that. Imagine. It's so good.
It's all good. I love that. So oftentimes I do have a practice of pulling excerpts from books when we've had the privilege of having authors on the show. And I want to pull an excerpt, if I can, from page 59. And the poetry is entitled Moon. And I want to read an excerpt. I know it's 2 pages, but I want to share this with the viewers. I've sat on this bench a time or two while the wind and sun comforted me. My thoughts would switch their tunes. to hollow voices of solitude. It's in the wind I feel your touch. In the sun you keep me warm. It's in the wind I hear your silent whisper. Still your moon remains untouched. Talk a little bit about that. I know it's just a snippet of the entire poem. Talk to me about what that represents a little bit more. Allow us to connect to that poem. Say more about
One of my favorites. So you'll notice my yoga studio is Ganga Moon. My birth sign is the moon. July 7th is my birthday. That poem, I was in Port Colborne, feeling deep feelings of love, but also loss. My grandmother had passed away, but she had been the one person that showed me love, like true love. And I was sitting at a bench, and Port Colborne is a little city on Lake Erie, one of the Great Lakes, and it has locks, so the ships would go in and out. And my grandfather would had the job where to lift the bridge, so I would go up and down as a child, and I would sit on that bench and write. And I knew that in the wind and in the rain that she was there. The sun did keep me warm, and it comforted me. And I would dream on that bench of moments like this, where my words could help touch and heal the entire world. That was my dream. That was my vision.
that's incredible.
So full circle right here.
Yes. And not scripted at all. I just
Zero.
felt led to read an excerpt out of that.
One of my favorites. Yeah.
How can we continue to use the strength of the word, and how can that continue to help us grow, especially in these busy times that we're in right now, entering 2024? What are some things that words could do to a person who doesn't realize the true powers of the word? What can help make that bridge connect?
I think we do that every day. So we talk to our girlfriends every day, and some of them are struggling. Some people go through a lot of hard things. And I like that book. You know, the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting? And then everyone that's pregnant gets that book.
Yes.
That's how
I got it.
That's how I wanted, no matter how dark the stain. When you hear someone who's suffering miscarriage, who lost a baby, all of these things of nature, right, is to give, no matter how dark the stain, to that person, because it gives them words for what's happening that they might not have themselves. And then in those moments, you know you're not alone, and you can feel on the inside that there's more than just the depths of your pain. Reading one poem a day, my Zen teacher taught me, softens your heart. So he would go to sleep every night and write a poem. He'd wake up every morning and write a poem. Simple little things, little
You know, and
things.
it's not something that we're used to. And this is the first time that I've heard that of course I have your book in my hands, and so I am eager to get to know all of the words, the poems in here. You know,
Thank
what
you.
what what is when do you feel most connected to the word?
All the time.
Okay.
I feel so blessed that all the time in my mind, there's a poem running through it. And I just have to catch them. And I miss a lot. But I've really come to that place within myself and within my soul that I'm hearing the poetry all the time flowing through my mind.
What are some of the feedback you've gotten from others? I'm going to assume that many women have gotten their hands on books on your book, and they're
Mhm.
likely. I'm assuming that a percentage of gentlemen have done the same. What's the feedback that you've heard about no matter how dark the stain?
So one that really resonated, there's two that really resonate. One was a lady who was at my beach yoga class, summer solstice yoga on the beach. And she had sent me a message and said, "You taught yoga on the beach, and I was in your class." And she said, "Then your book came out in 2021, and I bought that book." And she said, "I'm writing this from my bathroom right now because I'm too afraid to come out of the bathroom, and because of her husband." And she said, "And I think that you understand what I'm going through." And so that was exactly what I was trying to reach. And here's another one. There's Rohypnol. You've heard of Rohypnol. It's a little bit of an epidemic, but nobody's talking about it. So I wrote a poem about it because I've had that experience. And even though my publisher was like, we can't call a poem Rohypnol, like we'll just call it Sunset Beach. And I'm like, no, I think we've glossed over it long enough. We're going to call it exactly what it is because it's happening all the time. We're in a rape culture. So this young lady, I was at a book signing in Welland, Ontario at a Kohl's bookstore, and she came in with her dad and she was holding her books. She was so sweet, 23, beautiful, no flaw. And she just held the book like this. And she said her dad bought it for her. And he said, I think something happened, like with the Rohypnol, and he didn't quite know what to say. And she just stood there. And then he, her dad was there and he just stepped aside and the young lady looked at me and said, I didn't know that there was words for what had happened to me. I didn't know that.
Wow. Extremely.
And I was like,
yeah.
It's like, there is, and that's not you. You are more than that. So yeah, those are two moments that really stand out.
100%. We're going to take a commercial break. We will be right back after this. Thank you so much for watching The Health Revolution. Our show is growing, and it's all thanks to viewers like you. No matter how you found us, please hit the subscribe button so we can stay connected and continue to deliver amazing content to you.
Life is so fragile, and we're constantly reminded just how fragile life can be, especially when we or a loved one is told we have cancer. Cancer survivor myself, I can tell you, we still feel very alone in this journey.
There's a study that's been shown that patients who are socially isolated have a worse prognosis, have a worse outcome than patients who are socially interconnected.
Buddies for Life is a non-profit cancer support group for those whose life has been impacted by cancer. Humor, hope, heart, and hugs.
Humor, hope, heart, hugs, and a whole lot of love.
Share this with your friends and family and support this community in every way you can. No one should face cancer alone.
I am a chemo buddy for life.
We are a buddies network.
No one does cancer alone.
Be a buddy.
And we are all here for you as a community of love.
We are chemo buddies for life.
And if you've heard 3 words, you have cancer, for yourself or someone else, you belong with us at Chemo Buddies for Life.
Healing through connections.
Welcome back to The Health Revolution. We're spending quality time with my guest today, Andrea Wehlann. She is a poet, author. She's a certified Hatha Yoga teacher, and she's been in the health and wellness space and is a leader in so many different ways. Andrea, let's talk a little bit about how you continue to lead and make that connection. Gangamoon Yoga, talk a little bit about that. And you've mentioned several events that you've had the opportunity to lead. Say more about that. How do you lead others? Where do you begin with that? What's your process of connecting?
Follow my heart. No. Gangamoon Yoga is my heart and soul. And Ganga is a river in India responsible for healing. And that's really every cell in my body is to help people heal. So Ganga Moon Yoga is a home-based studio. I did the yoga teaching and paying rent in high spaces. And now I've moved to a semi-private studio where I offer weekly classes, courses. My most famed event is the summer solstice yoga on the beach event that happens in along the lake Ontario in Niagara, close to Niagara Falls for those who might be from the States. And this event started with 11 people on the beach and just me and a little donation tin cup. And every year, the second year was 33 people, then about 66 to 100 I counted. And then the entire beach was full of people just by donation. And that is the meaning of yoga. So for me, some people want to be a rock star, some people want to be, famous, whatever they are, and that's great. But for me, just this little girl from a small town who sat on that bench a time or two to stand in front of all different ages, races, cultures, and have an entire beach, just me, no microphone, no one could hear what I was saying.
That's good.
Yeah, and so all of the participants are all looking at the water at the longest day of sunshine of the year, the summer solstice, and thinking it's the most beautiful experience. And here's this little girl who is watching everybody not hear me at all, but everybody moving the exact same way, all as one. It's the most beautiful sight I've ever seen in my life. And so I do it each year on June 21st. It usually falls on June 21st, the longest day that the sun shines. And then about 3-4 years ago, we'll leave COVID out of this story, but about 2-3 years ago, I added a July date. So the next dates will be in June 20th, 2024, and also July 25th, which are all on my Eventbrite, is where I post all of my events. Andrea L. Wehlann on Eventbrite.
That's incredible. And yoga represents such the opportunity to create that mind-body connection and then let ourselves grow from there. I think so many of us in society recognize that. How do you walk a newbie through getting to know themselves and understanding that mind-body connection? Because as we know, not everyone embraces yoga. Maybe they've not thought about yoga before, but how do you walk a newbie through that process?
Yeah, so usually I say, what are we doing here? Everyone will sit down in a class and I'll be like, what are we doing? What is it? What is it? What's yoga? What are we doing? Is it the postures? Is it the what? And it's really very simple, and I teach it very, very simple now. It's really just uniting two of your physical energies. You have 4 energies of the body, just to keep things simple: mental, spiritual, physical, emotional. If you can bring 2 of those together, you have yoged, which is yoga. It means to unite. So in my classes, I'll focus on the breath. Can you bring attention to your breath despite what's going on from your day? If you can bring attention to your breath, just even for a moment, that's yoga. It's not so much the postures. So one thing that I do is meet people where they're at. So because I've been in the depths of hell about 4 times, we talked about 1 or 2 here, but really, I like to really nail things in for myself. So one thing I do is really see them and meet them where they're at, because it's like I have this inner GPS that's been cultivated, that I can see where they are and I know the way out. So it's the first thing I want to do. And my teacher did that for me. He saw me where I was and he woke me up. So I see them where they are, and then I offer a calming space. The lights are low, there's incense on, and bolsters, props, pillows, nothing. And I teach a class that, being a Reiki master, I can also see, what they need. And that's what the classes are about. It's small, no more than like 9-10 people would be the most. And it's pretty profound.
One thing I do love what you're highlighting, and, earlier in the show, it was made aware that you've gone through your share of trenches and traumas in your life. But one thing that I noticed that you don't do is you don't stay fixated on the darker chapters, and that there's this level of I keep saying resilience because that's the one thing that comes to mind, is the leaning forward, the looking ahead. And there is a level of strength that's a part of that. And I just want to give flowers to you for that. And we definitely need to do that more and more as a society. That's how we can overcome the harder chapters. I would
Thank
say.
you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. We will be right back after this.
This is Madeline Blair, the host of Unlocked, where we open possibilities for when the unexpected happens. Join me Thursdays at noon and again at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Business Network, right here on E360 TV.
We're back on the Health Revolution. We've been spending quality time with my guest today, Andrea Wehlann. Andrea, where can our viewers find you?
Andrea L. Wehlann on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can find my events on Eventbrite, Andrea Lynn Wehlann. You can find me at Ganga Moon Yoga on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. GangaMoonYogaSquareSite.com. And my YouTube channel, Andrea L. Wehlann, has lots of free videos, transformational poetry. Books are all on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Chapters, Indigo if you're in Canada. And many online bookstores actually is Deeper Days and No Matter How Dark the Stain. Stillness in the Storm is a little bit harder to come by, but Amazon works for that one.
I'm gonna have to get my hands on that one for sure. One quick excerpt that I do want to share. I know we're running out of time. It is a poem that's entitled "I Am Okay," and I think it's very fitting to wrap up our episode. And it goes like this: I am okay in black tar feet and broken bones of love. My eyes tired, my tears release their strangling grip. Suddenly they race. I am at peace. I am okay on rainy days. I am okay in sunshine's fade. I swallow the gray that clutches my sweat. I live at peace. I feel no regret. I am okay. My eyes vision white through dust-filled triumphs of black and light. I live at peace. I am okay. I am okay forever today. And I just wanted to share that with our viewers. You are quite the author in so many, just me giving more flowers to you. Thank you so much for spending your time, sharing your wisdom and your words with us, with our viewers today. Thank you so much for being here, Andrea. We appreciate you.
That was one of the most beautiful moments of my life, seeing you read that poem. Thank you for all you do. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And for the rest of our viewers, I appreciate you being here. We're so excited that you had time to spend with us today. Don't forget that our website is thehealthrevolutiontv.com. That's where you can find more information as we are wrapping up 2023 and entering 2024. You can subscribe to our website or our newsletter where you can find out the up and coming information that's happening. We are wrapping up. We're getting close to the end of season 1. Don't forget that we are on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Health Revolution here on Achieve TV, on E360 TV. And for those of you, if you've tuned in live, we appreciate your time. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Our show notes for today's episodes at the bottom of your screen. If you're catching this live, we wish you the very best of happy holidays. Have a happy new year, of course. Continue to stay connected with us. You know where to find us. And until next time, we will see you soon. Take care.